But I just was at a funeral.
We'll do the system's check, so you guys can just go ahead and continue with your check.
Yeah, so of somebody who is from Merida who had passed away recently. So how long have you known Vince? Who was with you last night?
Solace.
Yes.
Yeah, for a while. So I've known Selena and Vince for a while there.
Okay, well, it was cool that
We
he was
both
there
went
to
to-
support you.
Yeah, they're part of my campaign team. So
Oh, okay.
He's actually my campaign manager? Co-manager? Yeah.
Very cool, very cool.
So
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean, they're both very passionate, very articulate, so...
So I've known Selena for a while too. I guess going back to UOG is when I really got on. I was going to school at UOG.
Okay.
That's when I met them.
Yeah, so they were, like, cohorts?
Yeah, just
Of the
classmates,
same
I guess.
age?
Yeah, we had some of the same classes and things like that. See each other around and stuff like that. Some of the same friends, and then just continue to know them over the years, you know. And I think they worked for like Senator Ben Pangolin,
Yes.
Angel Santos, then, and more recently, Selena's been working for BJ.
Right, right. Yeah, ever since Ben passed away.
Sure. So yeah, yeah, they just basically reached out to me when they heard I was planning on running, and they said they just wanted to help out.
Very cool.
And they've been really helpful, so it's good. I really appreciate it. It's been real good. I'm just tired. Yesterday was tiring. Went to
Yeah, I've got family from off island. And it's just
oh,
like,
you do, yeah?
so, you know, I had not seen the mention that we would be able to say something in Dededo, so I was doing like the family barbecue thing.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so I'm trying
Yeah,
to...
I wasn't sure if they were gonna let us talk or anything, but I just wanted to go just because I hadn't been to one of the. They hadn't been having a lot. Like I think they only had one other one that I knew of.
Okay.
The Manila meeting. I wasn't able to make that one. So I told myself I would go to the next one that they hold, which was the Dededo one. So I went to that.
Okay, that's good.
I was planning on going regardless of whether or not they were going to let us talk or if I was just going to go.
Right, right. Well, I mean, if I think about it, you know, most of the years I've been here actually have been in Dededo. Like one of the first villages I lived in was Dededo. I mean, I went to Maria, Ujo, I went to Weddingale, like that. Yeah, no, I used to walk all the way up to Weddingale from Santa Barbara Street. And one of the interesting things is, like I tell my students, especially my Toronto Studies students,
Yeah.
like it was a very interesting time, and we must have had it must have just been an interesting neighborhood at that time because like Frank Ragone, Leonard Uriarte, Sarah Nedadog, they were you know within the vicinity, and they've all babysat me like at one time or another, and I think about it, they're only a few years older than me, but it's just like, man, I hope I wasn't like a terrible child of a hodge where they have these memories.
All right, systems check is good to go. Are you guys good to go?
I'm good.
Sure.
Are we ready?
Yeah.
All right, folks. Welcome to the Howard Experience Show. Once again, we're doing our episode 12 from the beach one more time. We have our special guests, senatorial candidates. Why don't you introduce yourselves? And we'll start on the left side here.
Okay. Kelly Marsh Taitano too. My name is Dr. Kelly Marsh Taitano. And Mahoksai Du Giniwahan, I grew up on Guam.
Excellent,
I
excellent.
don't know how much of an introduction, and I don't want to
Yeah.
I don't want to take time away from Clint where we can go back and forth.
No
after
problem,
that.
no problem.
I'm Clint Pagel. I used to work in the news for many years as a newsman, anchorman, and then I recently left the news industry to run for senator.
Excellent, excellent. And they have agreed to come on the show today, kind of talk about their message and the 2018 elections that are just around the corner. I believe August 25th
Yeah.
is the big date. And I actually reached out to them because I was very curious, as well as I really am inspired by the courage that they have as a grassroots dynamic to run for legislature to help the people of Guam. That's kind of the essence of what you guys are trying to do, correct?
I think so, yeah, absolutely.
Excellent,
And I
excellent.
think definitely you nailed it. Yeah, we seem to be a little more grassroots. Yeah, I don't think we're a typical politician.
Yes.
She's a professor at the UOG. I was in the news, so we're not sort of from the typical politician sort of route, I guess you could say.
Nice.
I think for both of us, part of it is being out there, examining the day-to-day, examining the issues, and getting to that point where you want to actually participate. One of the classes that I teach is critical thinking, and so critical thinking is really important, and there are definitely steps to it, but a part of it is that you actually take action, that you think issues through, you think through them thoughtfully, but the other part of it has to be actually taking action.
Nice, nice. And I think that's definitely a component. And coming from Joe Schmo myself, Joe Citizen, and I don't want to sit here and be a complainer, but definitely we have opportunity in our government to take action on certain issues that are before us with people in that position instead of waiting. I think there's a lot of issues that happen that I think sometimes are provided with solutions at a time when it's most valuable for that person who needs to get that hype, so to speak. So what could have been done 3 years ago is just being done today because of that certain twist, either be it fear or opportunity to give them some credibility to push themselves forward in the political realm. Those are some of the things that I see, that I talk about with my friends around the barbecue area, around the water cooler. I was wondering how you guys feel about it.
Well, one of the things I really want to encourage, and I encourage it in class as well, it's that same critical thinking class, is one of the first questions I ask them is, well, what does the government do for you? What does the educational system do for you that causes you to understand your responsibility as a citizen, to be part of the change that you want to see, to get out there, to register, to vote? And so I really encourage people, like, we can make a difference.
Yes.
We can get out there. I mean, if we look at the elections, let's say nationally, it's the people that are motivated. It's the faction that's motivated. They get themselves together. They get themselves to vote. And they're the ones who maybe change the system and change who's in power and make some real big changes. And we can do that here. Our youth are really motivated, I think, and they need to take that additional step. I mean, all factions are important, but the youth are especially important, perhaps, or maybe they're feeling that way because there's so much at stake for their future. Decisions are being made about the culture, the environment, our community, our economy, and it's their future, what they're going to be handed by our generation. Well, I'm older than Clint, but roughly our generation, they have that power to help decide what's going to be handed to them.
Gotcha. Nice. You have any thoughts?
Sorry. I'll let you go first next time.
No,
Or do you concur?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think it's good. Well, I guess I think one of the things she started talking about is, getting people more involved, right? And in the political process, I think that's important. I think it's real important for everyone to be involved. That's what democracy is. It's not supposed to be for a select few or just for certain special interests. You kind of talked about it earlier.
Yeah.
You mentioned to me about the $50 cap.
Yeah.
I placed a $50 cap on donations to my campaign, and the reason why I did that was in order to even out the playing field and allow it for anyone to be able to participate,
Yes.
and to sort of invite the public to participate in democracy, and not just select few, not just those with money, not just those with special interests and influence.
Okay. For the layman, what does that actually mean? Like, when you say this $50 from anybody, in the past,
But right now, the way it is now is
Yeah.
like an individual can donate up to $2,000 to a particular person's campaign.
okay,
So, some people, if they have enough money, they'll donate $2,000 to a particular candidate's campaign. That's the cap per person.
okay,
So, but there's also super PACs. And super PACs enable businesses or any entity basically to throw a bunch of money into one pool, and then that, as I understand it, doesn't have really any limit at all. So they can throw tons of money into that super PAC. Then that super PAC can then funnel that money to a candidate.
wow,
Yeah.
super PAC.
Yes.
Which is interesting because, in other situations, corporations can be considered in the same way as a person. So it's right? It's interesting that there's that sort of sidestepping.
Washington lobbyists
the
actually
situation.
And
were
is
able
that-
to get that law in place to change election laws in
And
the
that
federal
is a
government.
legal way to receive
Right now.
donations
Right now.
right now.
Yes.
And is there
yeah.
a way?
We'll see if our larger U.S. community, if they continue to support that.
Yeah.
As Clint was saying, it perhaps leaves a lot of people behind or out who
Okay.
can't compete. I mean, we're talking about people who have billions, if not getting towards trillions of dollars at their disposal. How does a person who earns X amount of tens of thousands of dollars compete with that?
Yeah, yeah. So, just from my own personal view, I had mentioned to you earlier that I thought that was very dynamic, a lot of courage that you did.
Yeah.
I guess the next question for me is, how does that trickle to all the other political hopefuls to take this leadership stance to go, hey, I want to also be a part of that and also follow suit, even though the law hasn't changed yet.
Right.
Is that something that you have talked to other people running, going, hey?
Not so much, because I didn't want to put sort of the onus on anyone else to do anything. I didn't want to make anyone feel pressured, like, oh, you should do it too. I just wanted to do it really for me and for the people, and because it's something I felt that was the right thing to do personally.
Yeah.
So it was a personal thing I wanted to do, and if others want to follow suit, of course I welcome that. It's
Yeah.
very challenging, I'll tell you that.
I bet.
My campaign team is looking at me like, really? My treasurer is like, dude. My treasurer is Raph and Pinko. Shout out to Raph and Pinko if he's listening. But I tease him all the time, like, sorry, man, I made your job a lot harder right now.
But this is your principle,
Right.
and
yes.
that's very important. Starting this, because I think that's the other big opportunity in politics, so to speak, is the principle.
Right.
We talked to Jeff at Jeff Pirates Cove, a couple of weeks ago, and he made a joke. As politicians, the first thing you want to promise everybody is everything.
Right.
As a sarcastic remark, but
That's true.
some of the things you're telling me today, or you're telling all the viewers,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
that's not how it works, guys.
It doesn't
Well,
have to work
It
that
doesn't
way.
have to.
Yeah, and I mean, I've weighed things a lot in my mind about what I'm saying I'm standing for, and really, if I get in there, there's certain work that I want to do that I'm committed to, and I want it to be those people who believe that those are important things, to give them a voice, to give them an avenue. But I think the importance of people like ourselves who are willing to make certain statements and positions, like Clinton with the $50 cap, and like myself with the other issues that I stand for, is it does to a degree change the playing field of what people are going to do and what they're going to talk about. And I think those are really important things. that us being here makes people have to think about, well, what is their stance on certain things, so that they can see themselves reflected in what our stances are.
Excellent.
And that's the way it's supposed to work. Legislators or senators are supposed to be representatives of the people.
Yes.
So I think the two of us are good examples of candidates who decided to run because we've heard and sort of felt these feelings of the people that they want to see these type of candidates, such as ourselves, come out and represent their ideas and their beliefs. I think with you, a big part, and you can of course elaborate on it more, is the Protect Latexan movement. The sort of you got very involved with the Protecting Retidian movement, and so she's representing that voice of the people. I'm representing some other voices as well, and hopefully we can do some good things in the legislature and bring more distributed representation in the legislature, as opposed to just sort of the same old ideas that have been pushed over and over again.
Right. And with Protect Latex and Save Retidian, you know, it's really about so much more than that. It's about taking a hard look at what's going on. And one of the things that our communities has been known for is having a long-term view. And when we look at things in the long-term view, we got to remind ourselves to not look for short-term answers, because as I was mentioning, you know, our children and our grandchildren, like I have grandchildren here, I want them to have a beautiful Guam to grow up in, and one that has special places. And you know, we can't save everything. Development will happen, modernization will happen, but we can be very thoughtful about it along the way. And that's really what I stand for, is taking that time to really look at an issue from as much as possible, beginning to end, and say, okay, what are those long-term effects? How will it affect us now? Because we all want to have a good quality of life now. We want our lives to improve, but we also want to do that for our children and our grandchildren. And so you have to think in that long-term strategy. And so it may make people a little bit uncomfortable at times to not want to not just look at the short term, but to have that long-term view. But we all benefit more so in the long run because of it.
Yes. Okay. And how did we? Because you know, I could see the average person, you know, just really thinking of, when am I going to get my tax return? That's what's important to me.
Oh, sure.
When do I get my tax
Making ends
return?
meet. You know, I got paid this Friday. How do I make it to next Friday? I have been there.
No, we're here right now.
I'm still there.
So take that thought process though, because that's caring a family, caring of community, and caring of one's island in that small statement. How do you take that thought process and put it into the dynamic, like you said, and stretching that for a decade, and going, hey, that can you pick up on the beach today is going to help us 10 years from now.
Right.
How do we do that?
Well, you know, some of it is helping us recognize what we have. I mean, the island is called Guam, right? And so some of what we do in my Historian Guam, or my History of Guam class, is we really look at concepts, like what concepts are the frameworks that we're living in, and how can we challenge those or realize what they are, to realize that we are in control of thinking about them differently, and then that can change the way our life is. So, I mean, some of it is tackling those hard issues about, of course, we have to tackle the economy. Of course, we have to tackle, you know, parts of government where it needs to be trimmed and tightened. But the other part of it also is looking at what we have, recognizing the wealth of our family, the richness of our lives, the richness of what we have, and putting real value in it, and really recognizing that for each other. And so it doesn't follow maybe as much the mainstream economic ideals of the marketplace and what you have and always getting more. But we're very family oriented, and so it's taking the time to say that family orientedness is beautiful. Let's celebrate that about ourselves and remind ourselves that that gives us a strong part of the quality of life. Many places in the Pacific are doing that. They're coming up with their own paradigms of evaluating what is causing real quality of life, real happiness. And it's not always about the dollar. Like I said, don't get me wrong, the dollar is still important. I'm not telling anybody, you know, that it's not. But there are some real things that we can do to help us understand and appreciate the richness of what we do have that's family, culture, and environmentally based.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, Neil.
I guess to add to that, so the question was sort of how do we get people to think that way? Is that?
Yeah, how do we? Because like I'm at the supermarket, and you're going around, and people are looking at the different prices of food, and hey, they can tell. They can tell if the can of food went up by 2 cents.
Right.
That's how sharp they are on prices for food. But they're not, or we're not as sharp with things like environment or change that happens 10 years down the road. If they ask us, or if I was asked, what can I do to make the island better 10 years from now, it's going to be a little bit of a struggle because I'm not educated enough.
Yeah.
Maybe if I would.
I think you just answered the question.
Yeah.
You said educated enough.
Yes.
So that's
Yes.
where it starts with education.
Yes.
We have to educate the public more about what does it mean when you throw this can here today on the beach. It means 10 years from now that same can is still sitting there on the beach in the sand. What does that do for the environment? What are the effects 10 years down the road? I think one of the interesting things about human people in general is we are actually able to forecast and see ahead. In fact, that's part of what's made the human species the dominant species on the planet,
Yeah.
is because of our ability to anticipate and forecast. That's something that neuroscientists really study compared to other animals in the animal kingdom in the world, is we're the best at doing that. We know the seasons of fish when they come in. We know, oh, this is when this is when the trees are going to bear fruit. And that has expanded and grown to where we forecast and see things down the road more. But it just, for the average Joe to learn it, that's where we need to educate and share that information and say, okay, 10 years from now, this is what it means if we do this now. So yes, it is also part of human nature to sort of look at the here and now and focus more on that. But ultimately, we do have the capacity to forecast and see what things could be like in the future if we do things now.
Nice.
Right. And one of the things we're so fortunate as a community, I'm sure Clynt has gotten out there in similar ways to me, but we have this growing number of local experts, people who grew up on the island or have made their island the home, and they're very committed to it. And so we have this growing number of local experts who are in it for the long haul. And it's creating those opportunities to really have them weigh in and take them seriously as politicians. I mean, I would do that as a senator, certainly, is listen to what they have to say and see what we can do to follow it through, not just in one facet, but like I was saying, trying to look at it from every facet possible, so that we're approaching it in a multi-faceted sort of way to try to get to the beginning, the middle, and the end of that situation.
And find a solution. Agreed. Thank you. Let's switch gears now. Let's try to kind of go to your platforms, your philosophies as up and coming candidates and senatorial hopefuls. Is there a particular message you want to talk to the people, send to the people that are watching today?
Would you like to go first? I could go first.
Sure. Let's see. Let's ask how many times have I gone first to try and even it out? Because I do believe I hold doors open for men.
Joke and poll for?
Well, here's sure.
There we go. Joke and poll. I can see that one.
Paper, rock, scissors. I was watching him. Never mind. I'm gonna go off on a tangent about the movie I was watching.
We can do it.
That had that thing. So, anyways, I guess paper always beats rock, right?
Yeah.
Really?
Statistically, yeah.
Really? Hold up a paper and I'll throw a rock at you. Tell me which one wins.
Don't do it.
No, I wouldn't really throw a rock at you, but I mean, seriously, paper beats rock. So, anyways, that's a whole other tangent. So, my platform. A big part of it is we talked about things like education, and we talked about other things like that, and how do we improve quality of life on Guam and things of that nature. I think a lot of it stems from getting our financial house in order. Right now, we're basically in a fiscal crisis. Today's newspaper, today's news, the TV news and everything, reports are they're saying we're going to be $150 to $160 million short next fiscal year. Now they're talking about raising another set of taxes. These are all major issues that we need to tackle, we need to deal with. And so it comes down to money, and that's where the dollar is important. It definitely comes down to money, and a big part of that is we can't do anything without money as far as, running a proper educational system, running the hospital properly and everything. So a big part of my platform is fixing this financial crisis. And I think we need to approach it from more than one way. The first way I think we do need to approach it is to make serious cuts in the government. Not necessarily cutting personnel per se, but let's look first at wasteful spending. And I know there's wasteful spending in the government. I guarantee there's wasteful spending in the government. I know some examples of wasteful spending in the government. I can use one example right now. Almost every government agency on the island has some sort of 5-year or 10-year strategic plan where they hired some off-island consultant, some consulting firm to produce this plan, which is all great if they're actually going to follow and implement the plan.
Yeah.
But I would say 90 to 95% of those plans, it's just money that was wasted, given to a big consulting firm out of the U.S. mainland that did this big 5-year to 10-year strategic plan, whatever it is, and the plan just sits and collects dust. On the shelf, never implemented. What was the point of that? We flew out experts from California. They came here 3 times.
First class.
First class. Came here 3 times. We took them out to eat.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah, and then they put together the plan. We spend all that money, and then we don't do anything with it. Well, A, we got to stop doing that if we're not going to actually use the plans. Or B, what about the planners we have here on island? Each agency usually has its own planners. It's a position in the government. Planner 1, Planner 2, Planner 3, right? It's actually a position in the government. Let's use government planners first. In fact, they probably know the system better than anyone else because they're working in the government. Rather than an off-island consultant that comes here, then we have to give them a crash course of how things work here. Yeah. And then sometimes they try to apply things that they use back in the States that may not work here on Guam at all in the climate and the culture here on Guam. So that's one example of waste. There's tons of other examples of waste. So I think if we start trimming the fat there first, then we'll see what's left with that. Now, the other approach I want to take is generating new revenue. And I think we can do that by creating new industries. A big industry I'm a huge proponent of that I fully believe we can create and stand up here is the agriculture industry, something that we're not doing right now. We import 90% of our produce. Yeah. We're importing produce and sending money off island again when we could be growing that produce here, keeping that money on island, employing more people on island, creating jobs, creating a whole new industry. And we'll be eating better produce. Right now, a lot of the produce that comes in, you mentioned to me you worked in the restaurant business, right?
Yes.
You know the produce that comes here is not fresh. Of course not.
Of course.
It's 2 weeks on a container, right? And they
so
have...
they say it's 2 weeks.
So they say it could be longer, right? So I had a friend who's a chef. I don't want to say who he is because I didn't ask him permission if I could. But anyways, I was talking to a chef once, local chef here on Guam, and then we were kind of talking about produce and everything, and he says how it's such a pain to get really good produce here on Guam. They have to ship it in from the States, and we don't get the best quality produce. He gave me an example. He said that he kind of, to explain it to me, I guess in easier terms, he said, look, in the States they might have like an A class, a B class, and a C class of the produce, right? He's like, guess which one gets shipped to Guam? The C class, which is the worst produce, gets shipped. Oh, send that to Guam. Also, they tend to pick the produce earlier and send the younger stuff, like strawberries, for example, or bananas. He taught me something I never knew, that on Guam, the bananas we ship in here, if you ever notice when you get them at the store, a lot of times they're kind of yellow, but then the tip, like the stem is a little green a little bit. And then when you take it home, like it goes bad like this real fast. Yeah. They're force ripened on Guam. They're shipped here green in the containers because they pick them green so that they can last the container ride here for a couple weeks or whatever it takes. And they get here, they're not fully ripe yet, so they put them in gas chambers that pump in a type of I don't remember if it's
CO2
carbon dioxide or something like that speeds up the ripening process.
Wow.
In these gas boxes. Then they put them on our shelves. Bananas grow here on Guam. Why don't we grow bananas here on Guam?
We're an island.
Here. It's a tropical fruit, right? This is a tropical island. Let's get back to growing things again on Guam. I believe we can definitely develop a whole new industry on Guam of agriculture that would develop money. Yeah. Develop jobs and create jobs and money. Now, another one of the issues that I'm pushing is also, and I believe ties in perfectly with agriculture, it's a type of agriculture, like a subtype of agriculture, is recreational marijuana. I believe that if we create that industry here on Guam, we tax it and we regulate it properly, it'll generate so much revenue for the island. Again, it'll generate jobs, not just for people on island that want to use recreational adult use marijuana. It'll also be used by people who need medicinal marijuana, which we know that's stalled for 4 years. The people of Guam spoke 4 years ago. This November, I believe, makes 4 years since the people of Guam voted for for medicinal marijuana, and it hasn't been implemented yet. So let's just cut to the chase. Let's go to recreational marijuana. It's less dangerous than alcohol is. Yes, they've done it in Colorado. It's generated lots of revenue in Colorado. There's tons of data on how much money it's generating in Colorado right now. It's generating money in California and in Washington as well. So let's do that here on Guam. In addition to that, I also think it would boost our tourism, which is another major part of our economy here on island. Right now, the Japanese tourism market is actually on the decline right now. Japanese aren't traveling as much outside of the country. Their population is aging. There's a lot of different factors for why that's occurring. But bottom line is we're seeing less and less Japanese tourists. That market's declining. So we've diversified, rightly so. We have diversified our markets to expand to Korea and Taiwan and some other areas like that, which is good. We do need to diversify, but I think we can still bring in more Japanese tourists back here. And I've spoken to some friends who work in the tourism industry and asked them, hey, do you think tourists would come to Guam for recreational marijuana? And their answer was, hell yes. That's exactly what they said. They were telling me, they're asking.
Osaka in the house.
They're asking. He said, they're asking for it now.
Osaka.
There you go.
I hear you.
See? And so what my buddies are telling me that work in the industry, they said, it's really difficult for them to get it out in Japan. Basically, it's extremely expensive in Japan. In addition to that, they kind of have to go through like Yakuza to get it in Japan. It's not as readily available as it's dangerous. You got to deal with some dangerous folks to get it out there.
Yeah.
So if we had it here, they would flock back here to enjoy. Imagine enjoying recreational marijuana. You're from Japan. You want to enjoy recreational marijuana here on the beach, looking at the sunset. And it's less dangerous than alcohol. People get aggressive with alcohol. They get into fights with alcohol. No one gets into fights with marijuana. No, I don't know anyone that does.
I don't.
If you know someone, point them out.
I never have. And I'm high right now. Just joking.
But people are very mellow, and I think it's a very safe. It's a very safe plant. It's used for medicinal purposes, and literally there's not a single documented death of overdose from marijuana. There are every year, I believe, hundreds of thousands of deaths from alcohol, if not more. It's probably more than hundreds of thousands, but there's a lot of deaths from alcohol. Yeah.
Plenty. Yeah. Agreed.
So those are three major things in my platform. There's a lot of other things I'd like to accomplish. A lot of it just has to do with, if you throw a topic at me, I'll have an answer for it, for the most part.
Well, sounds awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I realize that working as a senator, it is rolling up your sleeves and tackling some of those issues that deal with trying to make sense out of our financial crisis. Those are really important things. They hit all of us on a day-to-day basis. My parents are getting elderly, and them going to the hospital, we want to make sure our hospital is there. That depends upon finances right now.
Yeah.
It goes on, and so they really feed into that quality of life. The other part of that, though, so I am committed to those things, doing the hard work, the research, and the pouring through all the numbers to get that work done. But a lot of my interests are also community empowerment. One of the things that I say to my students is we go over stereotypes for a variety of reasons in my History of Guam class. And so I'll point to myself as a stereotype, especially here. People might look at me and say, oh, okay, well, you've had a certain kind of background. It's not a surprise you ended up teaching a university class, perhaps.
Yeah.
But most of them probably wouldn't realize that when my family had moved to the States for a period of time, without family or friends in the places that we went to, we actually became extremely poor. We actually were, very poor. We were on food stamps. We were trying to make it. And we actually ended up being homeless for a couple of years. And so with that background, I really think about families in need. I really think about those children who are going to school, and we don't know if they have electricity at home that they go to, or what life is like back at home for them.
Yes.
And so, I look at those needs of the community, and I really want to find those ways to empower them. It's part of what we do, as I mentioned earlier. Some of it can boil down to just very simple things, but that those simple things can make a really big difference and make them feel like they have a rich life in other ways, that there's a lot of validity in the life that they lead. There's a lot of systems for support that we can set up or strengthen for them, so that we are helping the children at school, the families in need, the homeless population that we are seeing more and more of. And, I'm not sure how widely people know this, but our suicide rate is really high. And just in the last few years, it's getting close to doubling. It's already really high rate. And so the students the youth are feeling these stresses that are going on around us, that deal with the economy, that deal with, these changes in the environment and our demographics and things. Like, we have changed in a really rapid way since World War II. If we look at those changes that have happened within my lifetime, within my parents' and grandparents' lifetime, it has changed incredibly. I mean, gosh, I grew up before micromall and stuff. But for them, it's been their entire lives, for this newer generation. But anyway, so finding all of those ways to empower the community, and I've really committed myself to that. I've spent the last several years working in community outreach with the Zuda Foundation. Every now and then I throw in my hat and help out Island Girl Power. And so, again, committing myself to that. But then also, part of what I have been doing is promoting the culture. The culture is part of our tourism product. It's part of our cultural identity, whether we're from Guam or not. Once you get here, everybody develops this island lifestyle and this feeling of island identity.
Yes.
And so we need to figure out ways to bolster that, to strengthen that, so that we, again, are feeling like we can combat those stresses that are out there as the world is changing and we're modernizing. And then the other part of this is the environment, that with all of these changes, that yes, we are developing, yes, we will be modernizing, but that we're putting things into place so that we're keeping those special parts that we grew up with, that we're making sure that I can hand them over to my children. Well, my children are kind of getting older, but obviously I'll still be handing something over to them. But I now have several grandchildren, and I want to make sure Guam is the best it can be when we hand it over to them. In teaching history of Guam, I spend a lot of time looking at archaeological reports and environmental reports and so forth. And we have 9 ecosystems. Each one of those ecosystems needs to be cared for. They have an important function on this island. They are part of safeguarding our corals and our fish populations. And so we need to make sure that we understand that marshes, so there are marshes here, not just my kind of marsh, but the other kind of marshes. Those marshes have really important roles, like I said, in safeguarding our corals and our fish populations, because they're a filter that stop a lot of the erosion and sediments that might make its way to the ocean.
Mangroves, right?
Yeah, and mangroves serve that same purpose as well. Yeah. So there's a lot of really delicious food in mangroves, the crabs and so forth. But, with those 9 ecosystems, we need to make sure that as a community, we're thinking about all of them and understanding what all of them do and ways that we can appreciate them. And that's a large part of the tourism. When people come here, it's not for the built environment. Yeah. And there's so many aspects of tourism that we can build on that. We can have restorative therapy, where you're bathing in nature. This is some of what our psychologists are already doing on island. They're spending time and encouraging their patients to go out there and spend time in our nature.
Yes.
There's the almond that is there, the traditional medicine. And the traditional medicine, like, you can't necessarily just grow it and say, well, stick it in a greenhouse and it's going to be the same, because traditionally, culturally, that almond needs to be in the environment it's always been in, and it's also a continuation of where it's been, and those same plants that have been in that environment, they create these very special relationships, but they've also been there naturally or placed by ancestors, and so there's a strength and power to that as well.
Ceremony. Right?
Well, yeah, it's this deep level of significance, and it's all tied together.
Okay.
So there are those parts to the tourism. I've also traveled to places where we actually paid to be walked through a limestone forest or the other forests, tropical forests, and it's actually a tourism product. So we can develop things like that. Tourists are looking for these new avenues. They're starting to go to some of the things like our Tinta and Faja massacre sites to understand World War II by experiencing it firsthand. And I'm sure that there are parts of our tourism industry. I mean, a lot of our tourists, as I understand it, come from cities. They come from these very built environments. And so if we broaden those opportunities of what they can experience when they're here, it's a wonderment of what we have culturally, environmentally, but then those two are so tied together.
Yes.
And we have so many native species, both plant and animal, and so for some people it hits them deeply. Other people, they're not maybe sure why we put so much time and attention to it, but it's part of that richness and that diversity, and they each also have a function in keeping our forests healthy, which help keep our ocean healthy, which help to provide food that we like to eat. Like, it's all connected.
It's all linked together. Symbiotic.
Right, helping people understand those connections and those real roles, but then providing that support and putting out real programs. You know, one of the programs that I really want to work on is our Historic Preservation Office. We've had it for quite a while, since the 70s, but we're now at a point, a lot of things have happened since the 70s. We need to strengthen our historic preservation laws. We need to update them to the new language, the new concepts. And like, one of the things right now, you know, in the past we've looked at historic preservation as like an object or a building, but really now they're talking about it as this whole landscape and understanding it's the plants, it's the region, it's the whole district, it's that relationship between the environment and that building or object or what have you, that all together make something meaningful.
Yes.
So updating those kind of concepts, and then also perhaps working with the Guam Preservation Trust, which has served our community well. They've done a lot of wonderful things, but we are also getting to these points where as a community we need to decide, like, let's say Tumon. In Tumon, there were at least 5 or 6 ancestral villages there. They were each large, rich, diverse, and so forth. And they had a very important life there. They really thrived there. But we are now down to having just one of those villages left. Like, the others have been moved aside for development. And like I said, development has to happen. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But when we are starting to get to those points where it's one laddie village left for the entire area, or it's one tree left of it, which may be the only species of its kind in the world, and it's something that has been part of our ecology for thousands of years, we need to think long and hard about removing that completely. And so with the Guam Preservation Trust, we might be able to work within its mission or expand its mission a bit, so that there are certain places that we can set aside that are truly owned by the community, that will be there for our children and grandchildren, so that if I can hike to Lost Pond, you know, and that is part of the Hala'an ancestral village, to understand their whole system there as that ancestral village, that perhaps that would be one of the ones that we would work towards, to make sure that there's access.
Okay.
Or that we are able to set it aside to say, for generations to come, we will hold this in trust for all of us.
Like a nature reserve.
Well, right, but we want to do it in such a way. Right now, we're seeing that conservation areas and some of these reserves and historic properties are being bulldozed anyways, and so it's not to impinge on people's rights. Families have the right to sell their land. Families have the right to develop their land. Developers have the right to purchase land and develop. But if we as a community come together and say, okay, there are a certain number of things that we need to really hold in trust for all of us, for ourselves, the health of our environment, the health of our community, but also our children and grandchildren, so that
future generations, yeah.
Exactly, they have a beautiful Guahan to experience and grow up in as well.
I agree with everything she just said.
Ditto, right? Ditto.
What she said.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Totally. We need to have, and that's, I think some of the things, just to put it in a very simple term, common sense.
Right.
That's what that is.
Yeah.
Setting up the future for your future generation, people from Guam, as well as other people that can appreciate our natural product, which is this. We are in the middle of the ocean. We are a pearl. We are a jewel. There should be no reason why we cannot sustain ourselves financially, as well as culturally, and open that up for other people to appreciate, as well as continue to give back to the future generations and say, hey, this tree has been in our family for like 300 years.
Whatever it is.
It's your turn to feed it and to trim it and make sure that it gets everything that it needs.
And to create that stewardship in them.
Yeah.
So if I was to boil down like all of these points, be it financial or community or cultural or environmental, it's really about stewardship, and that stewardship means that you're looking at it from beginning to end, and you're trying to look at it in a complete way. You're not just cutting to some sort of immediate chase.
Yes.
You're looking at it in a complex, because basically just about everything's complex.
Yeah.
And so.
Yeah, I think you're right. Stewardship. Yeah, and that's
like
definitely what I think public servants are supposed to be. They're supposed to be stewards of the people's money, stewards of the environment, stewards of the culture, stewards of society, essentially, through governance.
Right, and the health of the community is tied to all of these things. It's not just one of them. So you have to be able to look at all of them and be able to make some hard decisions and be able to be really innovative. And that's where it calls for, like, I'd like to call together groups of people to look at a variety of issues using their expertise, their creativity. Like one of them that I've long been an advocate of is looking at product stewardship. And so we're at maybe a bit of a crisis at this point where, our landfills on islands are very limited.
Yeah.
And we have just heard from China that they're not going to be receiving our recyclables. And really, recycling has its different complex issues anyway. And so if we look at product stewardship, we're looking at the life of that product. So when it comes here, right now, just about everything that we purchase, it seems like from laundry detergent to fabric softener, can you tell I do a lot of laundry? And things like that, they come in that hard plastic. And that hard plastic, it can't necessarily break down easily. It's not necessarily easily recyclable, and so forth. And so putting that into our landfill, we're perhaps doing ourselves a disservice. So there are systems in place. We can look at what other places have done, and it's having a certain amount of those hard plastics come in, but then you have a certain amount of those refillable pouches that come in. And I think that could cut down immensely on what we're putting into the landfill. Another dream I've had. So I've tried to put this into the minds of entrepreneurs, and nobody has quite taken it up. But you know, a lot of these are opportunities for young entrepreneurs or innovative entrepreneurs, or even those very established entrepreneurs, to say, you know, I see this new wave coming in where we can be more environmentally responsible. And so if it's coming up with bamboo straws or banana leaf straws or banana leaf plates, I mean, people are doing that already. And so my big throw out there, if one of you guys is innovative, is like come up with that sustainable Balutin package, right? Where you've got it in the back of your car, but it's all bamboo, or it's all Tupperware, but it's ready to go, and it's got a longer lifespan.
Reusable.
Yeah, so that it's reusable. We can figure out ways to get beyond the styrofoam and the plastic wrap. Like, there is something really innovative out there that will be kinder to our environment, and we're still keeping the culture strong. We're still balutaning, and I apologize to my tomorrow teachers for that. But you know, we're still carrying on the balutan.
And it's a business opportunity.
Exactly. You know, we have so many innovative entrepreneurs right now. I love it. I mean, we can go out there and buy all kinds of products that are very island-based. And it really feeds into what we were saying earlier about, you know, that island culture, that whether you're from Guam, whether you're Chamorro, whether you are making this your new home, like, we all are very invested in that idea of holding Guam special and dear, and we feel like we live this island life, and we love to have, I mean, heck, my nameplate on my luggage, it's plumerias. Like, I just can't stop, and most of us can't stop buying either Guam-based or tropical-based items, and so those are great avenues for entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
Expand. All right.
Yeah.
Excellent. Let's do one more before we close it out.
Okay.
And this will be a question that I was asked to ask you guys. You know, if you get the nod on the ballot, how do we bring trust back in the government? How do we do that?
Well, I think a first step could be by voting for people where you've really listened to their message and you really feel like they stand for values you believe in. You know, and I just feel that we're just such authentic candidates.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That we've put in the time. Clynt has put in years investigating things and trying to really understand the issues. I've put in time with community outreach, with years in historic preservation, with even with my educational background. A lot of it has been funneled into community outreach because that's where my heart really is.
Yeah.
And so looking for that authenticity in candidates, but encouraging those who are willing to vote for authentic candidates to get them to register. There's online registration, voter registration. I was at the GEC website the other day.
Oh, nice.
And I was like, hey, online voter registration's all right. So really getting people to get out there and do that. You know, I was saying earlier when I asked my students about what is our government doing, or what is our community doing, our educational system doing, that are causing us to get out there and vote. Now, we have a pretty high voter turnout, but it could be stronger.
Yeah.
But really, this is something that I think needs to be strengthened in the U.S. is I've taught government, I've taught history, like, there's really nothing other than a couple of quick sentences about getting students to understand their role in voting. But they have that power to vote for authentic candidates, to make those changes, and be at the steering wheel of a lot of this. So I think those kind of things are key. Like, you have to get out there. I was channeling Gandhi at this, and it was like, be the change you want to, like, vote the change you want to see.
Exactly.
Yes.
Not just empty promises, but people who you see in their life, they have really committed themselves to some issues.
Yeah, and for me, the trust factor was a big reason why, not the only reason, but was a reason why I decided to do the $50 cap, to show that I can't be bought, that I'm a candidate you can trust, because I won't take money from people who want to give me money, which is kind of crazy sometimes. Some people did tell me, what are you, crazy? You're saying no to money? And yes, because I think I had to make it even. $50 I think is something that's sort of more attainable for the average person. Another way I kind of explained it is like, if I were to accept $2,000 from one person and then say you only gave me $50, what's the likelihood that I'm going to listen to your message versus the $2,000 donor's message?
Or the $2,000 donor's going to go, hey, remember me?
Remember me?
I gave you
$2,000. And that's actually the minimum, because the real way it works is that guy can give $2,000, then like the person's wife or spouse will throw in another $2,000, and it's from the same wife.
Wow.
And then maybe he gets,
I didn't know that.
Then he gets his
That's
brother,
kinda
because it's
creepy.
individual. Then he can get his brother to throw into the so then maybe
wow.
as a group they'll put in a lot of money, or
Yeah.
if they own a business they can also. I think each business can contribute up to $500, or I don't remember, but there's a lot of ways of getting money to candidates. So. For me, trust started there, and also I think trust, we need to earn the trust of the people. And so, as she was saying, picking authentic candidates,
Yes.
I think they'll see a better response as far as authentic candidates like ourselves, I believe, will earn the trust of the people. If you get us in there, we'll earn your guys' trust, you'll see.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, there's
Yeah.
51,000 voters registered now. And like we said, or like I had spoken to you before we started this conversation, I actually reached out to them because that's how I feel. I think you guys are very authentic.
Thank
That's
you.
why we wanted to have the conversation. That answer was right on point. Meaning, that's why we're talking today. The other reason that we're talking is, my personal feeling is sometimes when the news media, the regular news media, takes some of these interviews, so to speak. We're not doing an interview today, folks. We're having a conversation. They leave out some parts that I think are important. And as you can see tonight, there is no edits.
Right, it's
Everything
live
is live.
streaming.
Everything
yeah.
you see when I cough or drop my napkin, it's all
It's not edited out,
it's
yeah.
all real. And like I said, I have never met both of them personally. We've never hung
Yeah,
out.
it's their first meeting, yeah.
It's our first meeting, and that's important to me as a person, because that means it's organic.
Yeah.
That means it's real. And I hope you take the message the same way, and that's kind of my goal. Is as far as broadcasting this, I have no sponsorship, I have no strings attached, and there are no people giving me any type of money to go, hey, put these guys on the camera. This is from my heart as well, because I want to be part of the solution, and I really feel that Guam needs more trust in government. Guam needs more solutions, and a lot of these ideas that came up today, as well as philosophies, these are things that I believe, and not only myself, but a lot of people in the community. So when we go out there and vote, everyone, we have a chance. We have a chance to bring in new blood. We have a chance to make a change, and we have a chance to do it this year, 2018 elections. And I'd like to thank everybody for joining us tonight. I'd like to thank my true guest.
Hey, thank you very much for having
I
us.
really
Thank you.
appreciate it. And if you have any questions or follow-up, please send it to our page or send it to the fan page. Other than that, is there any closing statements? Maybe take the time to give us your websites or any kind of promotions you want to throw out to everybody?
Clynt Rogel for Senator on Facebook. My website will be up shortly. It will be the same thing. It will be Clynt Rogel for Senator. .nationbuilder.com, I believe, but I'll put that all on my social media stuff. Number 6 on the ballot on the
Number
Democrat
6.
side, so vote number 6 on the ballot, Democrat side, for some authentic candidates.
Right, and I have a Facebook page. I have a Twitter account, so you can look for Dr. Kelly G. Marsh Titano. Look on Facebook, like the page. I'm trying to upload something every day that gets my message out there, so that people truly know what what I stand for. And then, gosh, what was I going to say? So that's one of those life moments. Okay, so here it is. Okay, so I was the first person to go and pick my number, and I thought, great, because the people before me, when they picked their numbers, it was kind of crazy. Where they picked, the first person to go up picked number 1 every time, and I was like, all right. So I went up there, and I did get a 1, but it has 9 after it. So I'm calling it lucky number 19. So when you get to the Democratic side, you know, go straight to the bottom to lucky number 19, vote there, and then go back up to the top and go about your senatorial voting business.
There you go.
Carry
There
it out
you
that
go.
way.
Very well articulated. Number 6 and number 19. We're good to go. We have some.
Do it. I can't do it on my hands. I don't have enough fingers.
We have some other senatorial candidates that were supposed to show today, but they had some other things they needed to do. We're going to do some interviews with them at a later date. But again, we'd like to thank 6 and 19 for coming in. Make sure you vote. And remember, this is the Howard Experience Show. Always remember, free your mind. And we'll catch you on the flip side. Take care, Guam. We'll see you next time.